There are so many problems and issues coming forward under this government that it's sure a good thing that Sir Paul gave us 8 days a week. This week at the Brian Sinclair inquiry, we learned that the Manitoba Public Trustee was responsible for Brian Sinclair for the last year of his life. The Public Trustee is time to time entrusted with the care of individuals like Mr. Sinclair, who are incapable of living and managing independently and don't have a close friend or family who can look after them. I asked the Premier, what are the expectations this government has of the Public Trustee in looking after a person in Mr. Sinclair's situation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The role of the Public Trustee is very important in Manitoba, particularly for any individual that does not have a family member or somebody in a position where they can provide care to them. The Public Trustee will step in. They will help them with basic financial matters. They will help them with legal matters. They will help them with other arrangements that are necessary in their lives. And the role of the Public Trustee is a role that we've provided legislative improvements to strengthen their capacity to serve members of the public that have no other visible or knowable support within the community.
Mr. Speaker, you know, the Public Trustee's website says, and I quote, Public Trustee makes personal decisions on behalf of mentally incompetent adults or vulnerable adults. In Manitoba, it's vital, as the Premier should know, in order to get good health care, to have someone who is a strong advocate for the person, particularly a person who lacks the capacity to arrange and organize their own care needs. I asked the Premier, does he expect the Public Trustee to be an advocate for good health care for someone for whom the trustee is responsible who is not mentally competent?
The answer, Mr. Speaker, is the Public Trustee can play a role in advocating for health care for somebody that may not otherwise be able to access it. That is a role they can play, and I can tell you that the role of the Public Trustee in this particular case will be reviewed as part of the inquest, and if there are any recommendations to strengthen that role, they will certainly be respected by this government.
Mr. Speaker, you know, we're looking at the moment for changes to the Public Trustee Act in this legislature. And it's come to my attention that nowhere in the Act does it say that the Public Trustee must take into account the best interests of the person the Public Trustee is responsible for. I asked the Premier, will he support the report stage amendment to Bill 36, which I tabled yesterday, that includes a clause to say that the Public Trustee must act in the best interests of the vulnerable person who is under their authority?
We will certainly take the recommendation of the Leader of the Liberal Party under consideration. The Public Trustee, by its very nature, is there to serve the best interests of the people they're looking after. That's inherent in the role. That's why the very office was put in place in the first place. And everybody who plays that role in the Public Trustee's office, often people with legal training, obviously put the needs of their clients as the #1 priority. That's fundamental to their professional training, is that the client comes first and that their obligation as a lawyer, as a Public Trustee, is to put the needs of the client first. That's part of their code of ethics, that's part of their training, that's inherent in the nature of the Public Trustee's office. If there's any misunderstanding of that, we'd be happy to discuss that with the Leader of the Opposition and look at what other communications or measures could be put in place to strengthen that role. But that's the inherent nature of the role, Mr. Speaker.